I'm Ter Strawman at Thoracure Amateur. Thank you for selecting this video on what I told the dangerous black smoke entity. Before I continue, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, now's your chance. Do it now, that way you can also activate the notification bell feature and be apprised of my new uploads. Share the joy of this channel with others. Start now. Give this video a thumb up. Now, lest you forget to do it later. What I told the dangerous black smoke entity. New Year's Eve, 1983, as 1983 rolled into 1984, I was called at about 9 p.m., 3 hours till New Year's Eve midnight, I was called on my phone in Pennsylvania. And my presence was required in New York City, on the Lower East Side, 9th Street and Avenue C, because there was a problem. The apartment had been mine. It still was in my name. But I hadn't been there for 3 months. I had let my best friend Jimmy live there until it was discovered that I was no longer around and paying rent. I had never paid rent anyway. So the lack of rent being paid during those 3 months didn't make any difference. I lived there for, a year or more. I never paid rent the whole time to the landlord. He was a slumlord, a scumbag. I had broken glass windows. He never fixed them, so I didn't have to pay rent. So I went, excuse me, and it turns out that the problem was one that I had faced before when I moved in there myself. The first night, I was laying on the floor in a sleeping bag. That's all I had with me. And black smoke rolled in near the ceiling, like through the wall. From on the other side of the wall would be a very skinny room in my apartment, and beyond that, in the apartment next door. This is an old building. Thick walls, a layer of brick, or maybe 2 layers, 2 tiers of bricks, and then lathing strips and horsehair plaster. All right. There was no fire, but this black smoke was coming in. And it came down toward me. It rolled down toward me. And I tried to get up and go out of the room, but it moved between me and the door really fast. So I laid back down. I couldn't jump out the window because it was on the 4th floor. When I moved toward the window, the black smoke didn't get in the way, I guess, because I would have died if I jumped out, or it knew I wouldn't. But anyway, this black smoke was sentient, and there was just a very horrible and malignant feeling about it. I couldn't let it get to me, but it was coming toward me. It was reaching down toward me now. And every time I would try to think of like running for the door, it would start moving toward the door. Well, all right. I started to practice, my telepathy with it. I was sending this very strong, emotionally laden messages and commands to go back, go away. Nothing worked. I started to name beings, who I thought might scare it, like Buddha, Krishna, Metatron. I tried archangels. Nothing worked. Coupled with my strongest will and focus and determination, nothing worked. This was tough. I finally said Jesus. The real Jesus. That's what I said. I forget whether it was in the name of Jesus or or like a request or a cry for Jesus to help or whatever it was. But I said Jesus to the Black Smoke thing in the name of Jesus, the real Jesus. Go away. And then I still used all of my will power, and desire, force, and all of these, focus, open consciousness, open like communication link going on. This time it went away, rolled back through the wall after hesitating a little while. I want to point that out to you. I am not I don't pledge allegiance to any being. But I think I have reasonable familiarity with the more esoteric biographies of the life of Jesus. And I think I have a notion of what he was really about, who he really was, and what really went on in his life and in his internal life. I think so. And, the real Jesus was the real deal. All right, that's best I can sum that up. And for good reason. My sincere intent with what I said to the Black Smoke entity involving Jesus, there's good reason why it would retreat. There's really good reason. Now, whether it was just my saying the name or something else going on behind the scenes involving Jesus, I can't say for sure. But what I said worked. All right. Long time passed. Never bothered me again. Then Jimmy called. And it was the same thing. But it was bothering our friends in the middle room, the skinny little room. They would go to sleep in there on a little bed that was beside the wall, on the other side of which was the apartment next door. And people would go in there to sleep over, whatever, get some rest, because Jimmy had a lot of people coming in and out all the time. I think that's funny. He had everybody over. 24/7, coming and going. That's great. But people were going to sleep on that bed, and then they would wake up feeling like their bodies jammed right up against the wall on the other side of which was the apartment next door, just jammed right up. And they felt, and then they could, when they opened their eyes, they could see these big black hands, fingers, hands coming in through the wall from the apartment next door, that side, wrapping his fingers around their bodies. And it looked like, really dense black smoke, the hands, and pulling them through. If they didn't wake up, they would dream it as a nightmare. They would dream that it was happening, and it would wake them up, and then it would be happening. So they would have trouble getting awake, and they would scream, cry, run out, so forth. So it was screwing with my friends. So I had to deal with it again. I had to talk to it again. Oh, rigmarole ensued. between with me, Jimmy, and my other best friend, Mike. We were the only ones there, except for my girlfriend. At the time, I brought her up from Pennsylvania. When I arrived, it was suddenly like everybody had walked out, and I arrived just like a quarter till 12, 15 minutes till midnight. Everybody had walked out. Everybody who had been there left. It was just Mike and my girlfriend, Jimmy and I, and we went through this. There was a kind of a horrifying thing that took place. Mike ended up in there while I was there, in that apartment next door. By a very strange circumstance. I mean, the door was solid, set in concrete, steel door, locked. Mike got in. Strange. Without having to open the door. And then he opened the door from inside and let me in, and I went in. And I saw a lot of very, very, very spooky stuff in there. This stuff looked like a storage facility for occult, dark art, black magic, witchcraft, sorcery, you name it, all kinds of artifacts. Things stacked up on top of one another. They looked like they shouldn't even be able to remain stacked up like that. Had to actually crawl through a tunnel of this stuff into the room that was just, on the other side of the wall from my skating room. And there was a very strange circumstance in there. Suddenly we could hear no street sounds. It felt so peaceful. There was a small bed, maybe 3 feet, 4 feet long, and 2 feet wide, something like that. Freshly made, fresh linen. It had nothing else on it. It was clean, not dust covered. And then there was a dresser against the wall with a mirror sticking up right against the wall. And all the silver nitrate was crackled, cracked on the backing of the mirror, that makes it reflect. And there was no electricity in there. There were no light switches that we found that would work. And we had candles. And in the candle light, I looked into that mirror. And what I saw looking back was very eerie, very haunting. It was a totally dark and fractured image of myself. It was not comfortable. All right. Anyway, Mike ended up, I left the apartment. Mike ended up laying down in that bed to go to sleep because it was making me feel drowsy in there. And I had this, sudden arising desire to lay down on the bed and go to sleep. But I knew that could not work because there was some creature in there moving around all the way through all the stuff back on the other side of that apartment. Could hear it the whole time, like climbing through things, and it was getting closer. So I left. Mike wouldn't leave. He ended up being asleep on the bed. And then Mike, Tina, my girlfriend, and Jimmy, my girlfriend and I, back in my apartment, could hear what was going on through the walls, which was never experienced before with any neighbor in any of those buildings. To hear what's being said through the walls now. No. I heard Mike arguing, just let me sleep. And then the window flew up next door, shuffling around, and then what sounded like a human body slapping on the sidewalk below, and then the window slamming shut. But there was nobody down there. Nobody down there. And then we heard Mike's voice calling up for us to throw down the key and let him in the front door. We looked again, and there's nobody down there. But it was Mike. He kept insisting, come on, man, throw down the key. It's Mike. Turk, Jimmy, come on, man, throw down the key. Let me in the building. Finally, Jimmy went over to the apartment next door and found Mike's body laying there in pretty bad shape. Very bruised face, very bruised. eye was swelling shut rapidly, black and purple, very swollen. And there were some other conditions that were not savory as well, like black and red candle wax poured all over his body. But we didn't have black and red candles. Ours were white. Little white votive candles about that tall. Anyway, got Mike back, finally. Jimmy brought him back. And eventually Mike said that he was thrown out of the window, landed on his face on the sidewalk, and he said, "Didn't you hear me calling for the key?" And I said, "Yeah, we heard you, but really, there was nobody to be seen down there. Your physical body was up there in that apartment next door on that bed still." And he said, "Oh, shit, man." I said, "So how'd you finally get in?" And he said, "Well, I just flew up. Like you've told me to do if I ever find myself in a situation like that." And I had told him. I told both Jimmy and Mike that. So it came in useful. Then I had to deal with this thing again. It took some doing. So I'm going to cut this long story short. Here's what I told him. About 6 inches away from his head, by means of a strong telepathic link, I told it this: "You know who I am. We've encountered one another before. You know what happened. Now you've messed with my friends. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go lay down on your bed. You're going to go to sleep. You're not going to wake up here again. You're going to go back to where you came from. It's time. And you know I mean it. And remember what happened before when I was talking to you. It's the same thing now. Now go do what I said. That's it." It never bothered anybody again. When people came in to clean out that apartment some few years later, I heard. The report was that there was nothing strange found in there. They just threw out a bunch of old stuff. That was it. So, what's my point? My point is just giving you an example of dealing with a dangerous entity. And by the way, I've heard that I'm not the only person that me, Mike, and Jimmy are not the only people who have encountered a black smoke entity, or the black smoke entity. Supposedly it's pretty damn scary and dangerous. Yeah, I'd say so. So I'm giving you my account as an example of dealing with such a thing. Did you like the video? Give it a thumb up. If you didn't give it one in the first place when I said it, then give it one now anyway, just to punish yourself for not doing it before. Subscribe, get notified, share the joy of the channel with others. Thanks for selecting this video on what I told the dangerous black smoke thing. I'm Turk Strongman at the Rhyme Drama Chiraka. Be well.